Looks like everybody's here.
You guys are now live on our YouTube channel.
Calling the meeting to order. Please salute our flag. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Law and has been duly advertised in the newspaper as an official meeting. Roll call.
Mr. Sargent?
Present.
Mr. Acevedo?
Present.
Mr. Burnetsky?
Present.
Mrs. Dye? Mrs. Rivera?
Present.
Mr. Colucci?
Present.
Mr. Walsh?
Present. Okay, motion for approval of agenda and addendums.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Mr. Sargent?
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo?
Yes.
Mr. Burnetsky?
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Colucci?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes. At this time, we usually have Board of Education recognition, and there will be none this month. I will now turn the meeting over to Mrs. Permelli for the superintendent's report.
She's having a little bit of technical difficulty. I'll just give her a second. I think she should be joining us. Nicole, Ms. Pormelli, excuse me, I think you're still muted. I think that setting didn't take.
Thank you. So, Channel 77, Ms. Irwin, is that up and working for us yet?
No, in true 2020 fashion, we have an issue with the van that allows us to do that broadcast, but we are live on our JTV YouTube channel, which is jtvlive.org, or anyone can search for our Jackson television station, but unfortunately Channel 77 is not alive right now.
But we did put a snipe on Channel 77, so anyone that goes there has a little redirect saying that go to YouTube to view the board meeting.
Thank you. Thank you both for the update. I appreciate it. So this evening I wanted to provide the board and our public with an update on our reopening of schools. As many of you have seen, we've been busy communicating as much as possible to our parents and our families. Our administrative team has really been working extremely hard, many hours to try and prepare schedules for both in-person and remote learners. It is definitely a unique start to our school year, with everything really having to be revised and changed. Nothing is as it was, so it is very busy, many people working many hours. It's definitely a challenge. We're essentially creating two separate schools, running an in-person school and a remote school with the same amount of staff we've always had and the same amount of resources. Obviously, health and safety is #1 priority for us as we reopen for our in-person learners. Recently, there's been some information that has been shared by building principals. We've updated our Q&A recently as well, trying to provide our families with as much information as we have as we make decisions. Most recently, we communicated that bus passes and schedules for elementary students will be available on August 31st. Bus passes will be for everybody on that day. And September 1st, schedules will be available for our 6th through 12th grade learners. We've also had communication from our principals about orientations, whether they're virtual or in person, for our transition years, our entering pre-K and K students, our 6th graders and our 9th graders. we're prepared to offer some orientation information for them. And just most recently today, we've communicated to our remote learning families some additional information, more details about how that will look for opening of school for their learners in their homes. Also recently, this week, we have started with our Chromebook distribution. We have the initiative this year of a one-to-one on providing a Chromebook for every student. Not only was that a mandate to ensure that every student had a device from our Department of Ed, but we also felt it was good practice for Jackson so that our Chromebooks are prepared with the apps that we use in our district and in our schools so that students have access to those same apps on that technology device, both in school and at home. And it also consists of our filtering system software to keep students safe while they're on the internet. So we felt that that was a definite bonus. Also comes along with providing less contact points for students and having to share devices while they're in school. And finally, it also prepares all of us in the event that things change and all of us have to go remote based on a mandate, a health mandate. So we are thankful to our administrative team and the people in the buildings. Remember, we don't have teachers right now. All of them have been working hard to get those devices in the hands of families. So thank you, families, for coming to pick them up as well. We also will provide IT help. There'll be a help desk during the year, and we will post many parent resources to help with the technology in the upcoming weeks as well. Another update I wanted to provide with opening is something that we have mentioned, and Mr. Baginski will talk about in greater detail when he talks about our health update in a few minutes, but it's the daily screener that is required for our in-person learners every day. It is based on guidelines provided to us by the Department of Ed and the New Jersey Department of Health that we are required to ensure that students coming in every day are healthy. So I am just putting a shout out to all of our families that is coming. Ms. Irwin is also providing a video tutorial on how to complete that in Genesis. So there will be more information to come on in the details of it, but just want to make sure it's on everybody's radar that it does need to be completed every morning before students arrive at school. And again, we will share more information about that. Finally, on the reopening plan, I wanted to point out tonight the board will be approving our essential written plan that needed to be submitted to our county office for approval. We had to ensure that we're meeting all of the guidelines, the 104 pages that the Department of Ed had put out for us. That plan has been written. It's been revised a few times already, but it is written and it is 89 pages long. Soup to nuts, everything that we were required to do is in that plan and will be posted tomorrow on our district website. Our county did approve it. There was absolutely no feedback of any revisions that needed, so it is approved and ready to go. So we are all set to open. And again, we'll be providing more information as the days go by. On a different note, at last month's board meeting, we had some questions in regard to diversity. What are we doing in our schools? What improvements are we making? It was a good conversation and some good feedback for me to hear and the board to hear. I just wanted to comment on a couple of things that are on our agenda tonight. I had mentioned last month the CJ Pride organization that we belong to, and actually this month is the month that we approve that on an annual basis. That is the recruiting the recruiting organization we work with to help us recruit diverse candidates for our jobs. So that is something we will continue to do in this district, and it is on tonight's agenda as well. Additionally, on tonight's agenda is an approval to work with a diversity council for our staff and our administrators. They will help provide some training and support for us in regards to diversity. And finally, I wanted to mention that we have started, I had mentioned that we were going to begin an audit of our curriculum, and we have started that audit. Ms. LaCitra has been working with supervisors to begin that audit of our curriculum. So it's a start. We still have a long way to go, but it is certainly a start, and I wanted to provide our community an update and our board an update on that. So finally tonight, I'd like to mention that Mr. Baginski will be presenting in a few moments our health report. Annually, this is something that's presented to the board. We have selected tonight to focus that report on the protocols of health and safety in our schools and how our nurses play a role in that. Mr. Baginski has been our expert in all of our health guidelines that come from our Department of Health in regards to what we need to do in our schools. So I am going to turn it over to Mr. Baginski to share that information with the board and the public.
Well, thank you, Ms. Permilli. I wanted to begin just by saying that we have really undertaken a Herculean task to ensure that we are in full compliance with all the state regulations for opening, as well as making sure that all of our staff and our students are in a safe place when they're returning to school, which I can attribute to a whole host of people, including our administrative staff, central office staff, teachers, custodial staff. This has truly taken a village to get to this point. So it's my pleasure to go through some of the information tonight related to the health and safety protocols for our school district for the start. So I'm going to begin by talking about some of the behaviors that we're going to promote to reduce the spread of COVID-19. First and foremost, the message to all staff and to students must be this year that if they are sick in any capacity or if they've been exposed to the virus, they must stay home. In the past, staff members and students may have dragged themselves to work or dragged themselves to school feeling a little bit under the weather, but this year, more than ever, they must listen to their body and listen to themselves and stay home when they are sick. That is one of the most important behaviors to reduce the spread. Second, and since the beginning of this virus, one of the most effective ways to reduce the spread is to promote hand hygiene by promoting frequent hand washing, the use of hand sanitizers. And so our administrative staff and our teachers, when they return, will be reinforcing that and reinforcing that on a daily basis with our students. Another component with regard to reducing the spread is to require the use of cloth face coverings for not just school staff, but for all students and for visitors. That is going to be a requirement for all of our staff members and students and visitors when they return to school, unless of course there is an individual health concern or talking about very young children under the age of 2. This is something that throughout the summer has been a bit of a political football when it comes to whether people should be wearing masks, people aren't wearing masks. The governor's strongly suggesting it, the governor's saying they're required. The Jackson School District really hasn't wavered on this throughout our planning. From the get-go, it was our intention to make sure that we created a safe environment for all of our students and staff members, and that means requiring the use of face coverings. In addition to that, we will be supplying all of our teachers, all of our schools with the appropriate supplies to make sure that they have a clean, disinfected facility. So that includes providing soap, hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol, the necessary paper towels and wipes, and also the face coverings. If students or staff members do not have their own face coverings or not want to use their own face coverings, we have ensured that we have enough of a supply of PPE to provide all of our students and all of our staff members with face coverings as needed. In addition to that, when our teachers come back next week, we will be talking in depth with them about their measures that they can take to make sure that students aren't sharing objects like they've been in the past, including their belongings, technology. Ms. Permilli mentioned the one-to-one program as a way to kind of curb this possible exposure between sharing supplies. That will be a key factor in the classroom and promoted by the teachers on a daily basis. As far as maintaining and managing a healthy environment, our facilities staff under the leadership of Ed Ostroff has spent the summer and through the time through the quarantine diligently working to clean our buildings and to disinfect our buildings. Mr. Ostroff has put together a very intense schedule for cleaning, which will be administered on a daily basis. And in addition to that, we have also put out to all of our administrative staff in our schools a memo that addresses any concerns with regard to the ventilation system and the water systems. Specifically, our ventilation system, our HVAC, heating, and air conditioning meet the ASHRAE standards as set aside by the Department of Education. So these standards are what we use and what our facilities department uses to make sure that our HVAC equipment, our ventilation equipment, is up to standard to meet the demands of the COVID-19 crisis. In addition to these things, by the facilities department, our administrative staff and our teachers will be situating their classroom layouts in a manner that promotes social distancing, ensuring that desks are separate, that one-way designations in classrooms. We've removed some furniture in classrooms to make more space. But our administrative staff has worked through summer, and our teachers will be working next week on setting up the classrooms in a manner that reduces the possibility of close interaction between students. Sometimes we know that close interaction has to occur, especially in a school setting when you're talking about the need for one-to-one conferences and things like that. In those times, our facilities department has purchased and installed physical barriers, plexiglass partitions in high traffic areas and areas where there might be close contact, where you can't maintain that social distance. For instance, the reception desks is one place that we put plexiglass partitions up. In addition to that, our administrative staff has designated certain hallways as one-way hallways. They've used signage to make sure that when students are standing in line or entering a room, that they know to maintain proper social distance. And so these are things that we've taken to try to manage the whole overall environment of the school to make it as healthy as possible. Some of the practices that we will be following this year, and some of them, definitely represent a change from the past. And one that is kind of sad to say is that we are definitely going to start the school year off without having any scheduled field trips or any school-wide assemblies and concerts until further notice. We want to make sure we get schools open and we can do this safely. We are working under the parameters from the governor with regard to indoor gatherings. But we have encouraged our administrative staff and we will encourage our teachers to find ways to have those experiences without actually going on those experiences or having large group experiences. Virtual assemblies, virtual field trips, those are things that you should absolutely expect when students come back to school in September. And you can never underestimate the creativity of teachers in finding ways to make these things happen. One of the other things, and it really speaks to our overall plan to return to school in the model that we chose with the hybrid model, is to ensure that we break up groups as best we possibly can. So trying to take our class sizes from 24 to 12, those are measures that we're taking to ensure that we can meet these social distancing standards, keep people safe, and reduce the possible risk to students and staff. Staggered scheduling, not just in the hybrid model, but also staggered scheduling as we arrive on buses and we dismiss students to buses, are ways that we're going to, as a school and as a district, try to eliminate the possibility of these large groups of students. Now, we do have a large group of students coming to school every day, but our administrative staff is going to make sure that we can stagger things to try to break that up as best as possible. We've also designated specific points of contact to make it a very streamlined level of communication from the district level, the school level, back and forth, and obviously with the district level communicating with various agencies, including the Ocean County Health Department. Staff training is a huge component of this. Next week, we actually moved the school schedule around this year, and it enables us to have 4 staff training days prior to the start of school, which will be a golden opportunity for our administrative staff to train our school staff on all the safety protocols and to get people comfortable with living in this new norm. Ms. Permilli mentioned the daily health screening as a very, very important component this year, and it is a heavy responsibility on the parents. The daily health screening is something that parents are going to have to complete at least 30 minutes prior to their child arriving to school every day. The daily health screening will be available and will be responded to by parents through the Genesis parent portal. The form will only be available through the parent portal account each morning. So students are not going to be able to complete the form themselves through their portal account. So this is a responsibility for parents, and it is a big responsibility because it's not only a requirement from the state, but it's also our first opportunity to make sure that we have students who are healthy coming to school. Students who do not have the form completed, so if a student comes in the morning and does not have the form completed, they will be sent to the school nurse for a health assessment, and parents will be called to complete the daily health screening form for their child. So this is a routine that from the day one, our parents need to be on board with, and we need full compliance with to make this a smooth transition back for our students. To give you some specific details about the daily health screening, the daily health screening really is in two parts. One is about symptoms, and so it asks a couple of questions about your child as they would be ready to enter school. The first question is whether or not your child had a fever or has a fever, and have they had a fever, and have they been able to shake it without fever reducing medication for 24 hours. That has always been a excluding condition for all of our students. So if the answer is yes to that question, the student should not be coming to school. It also asks two additional questions, one related to symptoms that are associated with COVID-19. They include chills, rigors, headache, sore throat, nausea. So if you as a parent answer yes to two or more of those symptoms, a little box will pop up and it will tell you, do not send your child to school. Please talk to your child's doctor or call the school for further information. The other piece of this is there are symptoms, there are respiratory related symptoms that if these symptoms are present, including cough, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, or loss of smell or taste, that those are telltale characteristics of COVID-19 from a respiratory standpoint. So if any one of those are checked off, that little pop-up box will also show up and tell you not to send your child to school. So that is the first component, which is about symptoms. The second component is about potential exposure. And so obviously, if your child has had a close contact with someone who is a confirmed positive for COVID-19, then you should not be sending them to school. They should be under a 14-day quarantine from their last exposure they had to the positive individual. Also, if someone in your household is designated with COVID-19, the assumption is that your child would be a close contact of that person. If they're in the same household, you should not be sending your child to school. And the last one is we have a state travel restriction for a number of states, a large number of states, where if your child has traveled to those states and spent more than 24 hours in those states, whether it be a vacation or whatever else, that they should be under a 14-day quarantine upon their return. So if an answer is yes to any of those in the potential contact and exposure, a little pop-up box will show that your child should be quarantined for 14 days and should not return to school. So when we have students who get sick in school, and so this is a popular question that I have gotten all summer long, and so I'm going to do my best to answer this so that so you have a solid understanding of what will happen. So if there is a suspected or a confirmed COVID-19 case, so in the situation of a student coming to school and being sick, the typical one would be someone who may be a suspected COVID-19. The school nurse would assess the student and determine if the symptoms match a COVID-19 suspected case. If it does, the school nurse will immediately contact the school administration and they will isolate the student into a separate room in the school. These rooms have been designated outside of the nurse's office so that the nurse's office can be cleaned and can continue to function as a nurse's office while we wait for the parent to come and pick the child up. So the school administrator will also make sure that if the child was in the classroom, that the students in that classroom are removed from that classroom and that classroom can be cleaned thoroughly and disinfected. The notification from the school level will go to the district level by contacting either Irene Manafra, who is our school nurse coordinator, or myself. we are the ones who directly interface with the Ocean County Health Department. So we would call them in any of these suspected positive cases, contact them, inform them of the symptoms that we're seeing in the student, and they would inform us if they're deeming it to be a suspected positive. If it is a suspected positive, we would also be gathering all of the information related to the close contacts of the infected individual. Now, a close contact is defined as being within 6 feet of someone with a suspected or known COVID-19 virus for at least 10 consecutive minutes. So that is what the definition of close contact is. And having done this on a couple of occasions during the quarantine and through the summer, the county health department is very specific about asking us about these interactions. So some of the questions that I've been getting are, does this automatically mean that your entire class, that if a child, an entire class or an entire bus will be excluded because they'll all be considered close contacts? I would say that it depends. It depends on where students sat, if they were in close contact to each other, or if they were not. We'll try to do our best to make sure that we decipher that, but we'll always err on the side of caution to make sure that we're excluding students who would be potential close contacts. After the immediate response, we would be looking to communicate with parents. So the protocol for communicating with parents, Allison, if you just switch to the next slide, would go as follows. The school nurse and/or the school administration will contact parents and guardians of any close contacts via telephone individually. They will inform them of their child's situation, that they've been a close contact, and also of their exclusion from school and the timeline for potential return dependent upon the test results of the individual. So, because if a student is a suspected positive, goes out and comes back and goes out and gets a test and the test results come back and it was negative, the close contacts of that student can return, can potentially return to school the next day. So that communication would happen from the administration or the nurse to the close contacts. Any student who is excluded from school for a potential exposure will be permitted to continue their education from home by participating in all remote activities that they possibly can. Students and school-wide, and this has come up from at a couple of times that we've had cases throughout the summer and during the quarantine, is the notification to the entire student body of a school. So if we do have a presumed positive or a positive in a school when school starts, we will be sending out a letter to notify the school population. The letter would come from the principal. There will be no personal identification included in the letter, so we will not be obviously not letting anybody know any of the details about who or what, but we will share with the school community that there was a positive case. Other groups in the school that were not close contacts can continue to function. They'll continue to do the daily screenings and we'll be vigilant for monitoring illness. And so that's important because one case is not going to bring down the school. We are going to do our best to track close contacts and notify and make sure that school goes on as best as it possible can. If suspected or confirmed cases occur in multiple groups within the facility, we would be in close contact, direct contact with the county health department, and the superintendent in collaboration with the county health department would determine if there's a need to close down a particular school for a certain amount of time or those kinds of decisions. But you should know that those decisions would not be made easily and would not be made in isolation. They would be made in collaboration with the county health department. As far as the protocol for after someone tests positive, so in accordance with the state regulations with this, we would be in direct contact with the county health department who would be determining the quarantine time for someone who tests positive and the close contacts. So either Irene Manafra or myself would be having this communication. We would then be notifying our students of their return to school time. And so that communication would happen on an individual basis with either infected students or close contacts. But one thing you should know, we as a district are a public entity. The county health department is a public entity. We will be complying fully with the recommendations of the county health department and providing them any information that they're entitled to with regard to our students. Because in the end, it's in our own best interest to isolate and to make sure that any kind of contacts are limited to the smallest group that we possibly can. So any student who is on a mandated quarantine or under self-isolation will be permitted to learn remotely during the entire span of the isolation or quarantine, and the student's guidance counselor will be the key contact to make sure that that's set up and that the student can avail themselves of the remote learning experience. Contact tracing for students and staff members, and this is after the fact, is an important part of reducing the spread and the virus within our entire community at large. The Ocean County Health Department will work with our school nurse to determine close contacts in the school, on the bus, in childcare, wherever the student may have been. We will be providing information to the county health department to make their contact tracing more effective, and they actually do the official contact tracing when it comes to positive COVID-19 cases. They have trained contact tracers who reach out and get in touch with people to inform them of their quarantine or their possible quarantine and their next steps. So as a community, it's important to know that we work in tandem with the county health department in that regard. Lastly, I think you can see that there is quite a bit of a shared responsibility with regard to making sure that this is all successful. Central office plays a role, school administration plays a role, teachers, staff, other certified staff, custodians, our parents, our students themselves. It's absolutely imperative that we all take the mindset that in order to accomplish this and to ensure a safe environment, everybody must comply with the protocols and at all times keep health and safety in mind as we make decisions. So at this time, I'll take any questions from the board if you have any questions about the presentation.
I have a question. What have you done about, what can you say about second language parents, people who don't speak English as their first language? How do they get their information?
Yeah, so all of our forms in Genesis and our entire Genesis platform can be translated into Spanish. Also, all of our communications, you've seen any of our communications that have gone out from the district level, all of them are translated both in English and in Spanish.
Could I suggest that we use our TV as we're doing now, Channel 77, that we have a running loop of Spanish, one time English, the other time, about advice, recommendations, updates, so maybe people can turn on and maybe get informed as to what is going on in the district as it regards to COVID? Can we use the TV more?
Hey, Gus, this is Ethan Noble. Yes, we can absolutely set that up. Once Allison gets me the information, we'll get that up on their looping.
Okay, thank you. I have one other issue. This is for the community out there. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I would like to compliment the superintendent and Dan and maybe Mr. Ostrov and all the administrative staff, because I had these papers with me, the agenda for 3 days, and I couldn't stop reading. And of all things, is the most thorough, informative, accurate, professional document. And I want the community to know that what we're calling an agenda for the board was something that touched upon almost anything the parent, the resident, the taxpayer, the voter would be concerned about, because I didn't have any section I couldn't go to answer a question I had. So I really appreciate it, and I want the community to think of this statement as coming from a resident, not from a board member, self-serving, more of a concerned citizen. This was a damn good agenda, very good job. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. As I opened with, there has been many, many hours to create these plans and many people involved. All of our central office team, our administrators, our supervisors, everybody's been hands-on, all of our staff that has been here. So thank you.
Good job.
Dan, question. Nothing was said about lunch the elementary levels, they're going to be eating lunch. What safety measures have been taken for that?
Yeah, the elementary principals are utilizing a couple different rooms for lunch. In addition to the cafeteria, they're using gym space, they're using the media centers, complying with the indoor gathering limit from the governor. One of the things that our food service department has done is trying to do more grab and goes for the actual students who purchase lunches. We have lunchroom aides. Those lunchroom aides will have proper PPE. They're there to help assist students so they don't have to get up and move around the room. And as you know, the lunch in general is a time period where students will have masks and be taking them off. So maintaining the social distance in those times is extremely important. And our elementary principals are emphasizing that greatly. It's an exposed time, if you want to call it that. And so maintaining social distance at that time is even more important than it is at any other time of the day.
How about after-school activities?
At this point, our after-school activities, even like our athletics, the NJSIAA intentionally is starting their season on September 14th. It gives schools an opportunity to open their schools and have kids in school without having to think about and worry about the after-school activity, the after-school athletics. Our co-curriculars are a valuable component of our children's school lives. And it's our intention to bring those back as soon as it's possibly feasible and safe for them to do so. At the September board agenda, you'll see that is typically when we approve co-curriculars. We'll have more information at that point because we will have been in school for a couple of weeks. So I would anticipate a decision, more details, I should say, at the September board meeting with regard to co-curriculars and after-school activities and when they might begin and which ones might begin.
Very good.
Does anyone have any other questions?
One last throw in. All this information we're gathering, I'm sure that we're going to archive it and have it ready for future use because this is an amazing amount of information that we're gathering as to what to do for the next time, because there will be a next time.
Well, certainly, I hope if there's a next time, it's very far away. But yes, we
Save it now.
We archive it, and Ms. Irwin has created these wonderful website pages for us that it houses all of our documents. As I mentioned earlier, the plan, the 89 pages, Mr. Aceveda, that you were referring to will be posted tomorrow. That really compiles everything, all the information we've put out to families thus far, including what Mr. Baginski just presented in regards to our health protocols. So yes, we are definitely keeping track, keeping evidence of everything.
Gus, you getting ready for COVID 2030?
I already have it. Oh,
I had a quick question about the Chromebook distribution and for the students that don't have any connectivity at home.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work?
Sure. We have a plan for that as well. We have some, if you recall from the spring, we had purchased some Kajits, which are individualized hotspots that we could provide families who are in need. And we also have an opportunity that we worked with Optimum. If they have Optimum service around them, we can offer them to tap into that line for a certain small fee that the district, depending on the need, would perhaps pay for. So it's for those who are really struggling for internet service. Some of our, families who are struggling financially, we would help them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Colucci has triggered a question I had, and I'd like to ask it if we could think about the old the library that was the on wheels. What are they called? There was a bookmobile, whatever. If we could possibly create a collection of those boards or those computers, tablets, in order to be in some kind of library form where people could take them out, just as if they would take out a book, in order for certain students who don't have them can use them and can avail themselves of the technology while they're working on something that's vital to them.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Is that possible?
We have Chromebooks available for every student, so that they will have. It's a It's the tablet that they will use and bring with them to school if they're an in-person learner every day, and bring it home every day. And then our remote learners also have Chromebooks as well. So yes, they do have those devices. So each individual student will have one.
Okay, just to clarify that we create, maybe with what turns out to be an older model, whatever, that we create a library, a source where people can go to, and as second graders, fourth graders, high school kids, and take out a tablet in order to use it and then return it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? At any time, as if it were a book. That's all. It's just an idea.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Baginski on the board? No? Thank you, Ms. Baginski. You know, very nice overview of our protocols. Thank you so much.
Good job.
Yeah, really good job. Also tonight in the superintendent's report, switching gears a little bit, we have Mr. Ostroff, who is going to provide an update on our ESIP projects that have been going on all summer. Mr. Ostroff?
Good evening, folks. How are you? I'm going to run through the 7 disciplines that were awarded under the district-wide ESIP project. If there are any questions, you can hold those to the end. And also, if the board so desires, I can give an update on the few capital projects that are either in progress or we've recently completed. The first discipline is lighting. And you can see the, thank you, Allison, for the photo you put up there. That is Memorial's main office. With the exception of some minor punch list items, both high schools are complete. The Johnson School and the maintenance building are also complete. The McCullough School and the Getz School are nearly complete. And work is in progress at Switlick, Elms, and Crawford Rodriguez schools. Lighting at the Holman School is scheduled to start up the second week of September. The Rosenauer School is part of the direct install program, so that's a little bit different on scheduling, and we expect that to start up the third week in September. All of this work will be conducted on the second shift as of Monday, August 31st, when the staff returns. We can switch to, that's another lighting slide of the gym floor. And the Memorial Gym, I'll mention that one again later. That's the Media Center at Memorial. And we can move on to roofing. With the completion of the work last week at Memorial High School, the Fine Arts Wing, the roofing project as a whole is complete. That is ahead of schedule in preparation of the beginning of solar installations. There is some minor punch list work to be done at various locations, including one section at the McCullough School that is going to be recoded. And there's a change order being considered by DCO or ESCO for some additional roof drains at the Holman and Johnson schools for some minor ponding that was discovered as a result of some heavy rains that we had. And again, all the roofing work that still needs to be completed, the minor things, will be conducted on second shift starting on Monday. That slide there, I believe, is maybe Holman. Allison, I believe you've got another slide or two for roofing. That's Fine Arts, I believe. And that one is Holman. Moving on to the solar. Our solar provider, ASP, is preparing to mobilize the third week of September to start the majority of the locations for solar panel arrays on the buildings themselves. The solar array for the retention basin at Liberty High School is tentatively scheduled for startup in the spring of 2021. This installation requires not only EPA approval, but once that's granted, then we have to go before the Planning and Zoning Board. And again, any of that work that may be intrusive will be conducted on the second shift. Transformers, that slide there that you see, that is a picture of one of our new harmonic mitigating transformers that are being installed throughout the district. The Switlick School is now complete, and Memorial High School is nearing completion. They have 2 left there to install. Work at Liberty High School and Crawford School is in progress at this time. And again, these transformers will be continuously replaced on second shift. Mechanical, that slide that you're looking at there, that is an abatement enclosure that was set up for the Getz School. As you can see there, the one thing that's missing is, of course, the 2 ancient boilers that were in that boiler room. The boilers have been demolished, and the 10,000-gallon fuel oil tank has been removed from the Getz parking lot, and New Jersey Natural Gas completed their line survey, and natural gas service to the building should be scheduled within the next week or so. Boiler installations, that's the that slide you have up there. You'll see that the tank has been removed. That area is scheduled for paving September 3rd and 4th. Boiler demolitions at McCullough, Crawford, and Switlick will be started within the next 2 weeks. Unit ventilators at Rosenauer and Switlick School are on order. We anticipate those to be delivered by the end of September. Rooftop units that are scheduled for replacement are also on order. Those are scheduled for delivery sometime in September as well. Ongoing work for the installation of destratification fans and some other minor equipment is currently in progress. And again, I know this sounds repetitive, but all of this work that is intrusive at all to the educational process will only be conducted on second shift starting on Monday. That picture you see there that's up on the screen, that is one of the new Metasys control panels for our energy management system. Johnson Controls has finished their site surveys, and they anticipate startup of installation of upgraded energy management controls within the next 2 weeks. And the last one that we have for the next slide is one shot for building envelope, and really it's that project is the weatherization of the outside of our buildings. And just to show that one slide there, a closer inspection would show that there is a gap to the right on the door hinge side and down the bottom. That's part of the weatherization project, as is any other openings that may be on the outside of the building, door sweeps, door jams, walking around windows, those kind of things. That's all part of the weatherization. And that work will probably start up within the next 60 days or so. We really would like to get most of the other work completed before that work is started. So if there's any questions on those 7 disciplines, and if the board would like, I can just mention really quickly where we are with capital.
I have. Hello?
Go ahead.
It concerns the solar panels. Is
Yes.
there any way that we can think and rethink the use of solar panels? Like you said, the rooftops will be considered, like always, but that we don't eat up wide open real estate for solar panels that eventually might be needed for construction for buildings. I'm thinking that there must be some way out there where the footprint is not so real estate hungry that it affects us. It will affect us in the future, especially since we're going to have to tear down what we put up. And
That's a great question, Gus. And to be honest, that's exactly what we've done from the very first solar installation that we've done. At Liberty High School, we took advantage of the existing detention basin in the front of the school. At the Elms location, we took advantage of a parcel of land that could not be developed in the rear of that property. And the new solar installation scheduled for Liberty High School is planned in the detention basin that is on the other side of Pride Parkway. So we're not using any available real estate that could be developed. It's being installed in a detention basin that must remain intact. So yes, we're not taking any property away. We're not clear cutting. The only places we're developing solar is where we can put it where we're not encroaching on either the environment or property that could possibly be used.
Good to know. Thank you. Good to know. Thank you.
I got a question for Ed about those harmonic transformers. What was their purpose?
These new type of transformers, as technology evolves over the years, of course, a number of our transformers, some of them, in fact, are close to 50 years old. The new technology is such that these harmonic balancing transformers work in harmony with each other in a building to monitor and to better regulate the supply of electricity to components in the building. And what that does is not only save energy, but it saves components as well, because you don't have that fluctuation and you don't have stray electricity. So you're not losing components by either a spike or a reduction in the amperage that's being provided. That's the new technology of those harmonic balancing units.
Okay, thank you, Ed.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions from the board? Mr. Ostroff, how about you go over the capital projects?
Sure. Allison, are you out there? The first one that I'm hoping we can throw up is the Memorial Gym floor. That project is 99 9/10% complete, with the exception of some sleeves that have to be installed for the volleyball stanchions. But anybody that has a chance that can pop into Memorial and take a look at it, the floor is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm sure it'll serve our students and staff very well for many, many years to come. The next slide is one of our ongoing modular siding, vinyl siding of the modular units. I believe that one is at McCullough. We were able to put 3 into the budget this year. They are just about complete. The next slide under capital is repairs, or actually refurbishment of the stairs leading to the portables at the Rosenauer School. They're just about done. And that was, of course, a safety issue. The next slide is a memory, of course, for some of the folks that may remember when this occurred. This was one of 4 that we're aware of where at some point a car had jumped the curb at Liberty and ended up either in the solar field or near it. We are installing a guardrail. That equipment, those materials have been ordered. I believe they are now into the vendor. They should be calling for a mark out within the next week or so, and we'll finally get the guardrail installed there at Liberty High School. The last capital project is some room changes at the Get School, and we have filed the required change of use applications with the county. So as soon as I hear back on the status of those applications, then we can move forward with those changes to Get.
The room changes, are they because of bathroom facilities?
No, actually, Carl Perino has put together a pretty aggressive plan to actually bring students back in the building from the modulars. There are rooms at the Get School that far exceed double what is actually the standard for a classroom. So we're hoping that the DOE will allow us to split those rooms and create 2 classrooms out of 1, and start to eliminate some of those modulars that are in that trailer park, so to speak, to the one side it gets.
Hooray.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Ostroff? Okay. Mr. Ostroff, thank you. A lot of projects this summer between ESIP and the capital project, so thank you to you and your team for overseeing all of that work and ensuring that it's happening.
You're very welcome.
Great work for our district.
Thank you.
Just one last comment for me in my superintendent's report back to our opening of schools. I just want to reiterate my message that I sent to families on Friday, is that this is new for all of us. This is a new experience. As I said, we are redoing everything that we know about education in regards to creating hybrid schedules, remote schedules. Mr. Rentante has been working really hard with everyone to complete those schedules for next week release. Normally, things that we do over months, we've had to do in days or weeks. So I ask our families to continue to be flexible, patient. We'll get through all of this. With anything new, we know there'll be kinks and some bumps along the way. But if we work together, assume best intentions, we'll get through it together and we'll have the best experience for our students possible. So with that, Mr. Walsh, that concludes my superintendent's report.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Move to accept.
yep. Hear you loud and clear.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mrs. Primelli. All right. With that moving on, we will go to the standing committee reports. Start with the state and county school board reps.
August 31st, 7 p.m. There'll be a virtual joint county meeting with Monmouth, general meeting.
Thank you. Parent group liaison, Mr. Brunetsky.
Working on our next meeting, I believe, is in October. We'll see if we'll be able to have
October. Okay. Okay, special education. I know they want to set up a SEA meeting, but I don't know what date has been set up yet.
September 17th.
Oh, September 17th? Okay, thank you. Scholarship, right now, there's nothing going on as far as scholarship. We got to get back into school first. Buildings and grounds, Mr. Colucci.
Mr. Ostroff just gave us a comprehensive report of the building and grounds, so I'll just leave it up to him.
Okay, budget and finance. Okay, at this time, we just got to see what's going to happen. All right, in the future with the budget, which comes out October 1st. Okay, from the state. Make sure we didn't get cut any more money.
Mr.
Okay,
Walsh,
yes.
do we also
Go ahead.
not add that we're also expecting an audit? You know, that we're for the funds we have and don't have, that and what we've been doing with it? No?
I'm not sure what audit you're referring to.
I'm saying that we're
He's
So-
talking about our audit. Our auditors will be coming in next month to audit the last school year that ended June 30th, 2020. Yes,
So that's in October or September?
September.
September? All right.
Yes.
Okay. Transportation, Mr. Colucci.
Going to have a tour of the satellite transportation facility on Friday at 9 a.m. And I'll give you an update at the next board meeting as to what that's like. I think they're just waiting for two more things. It's being used, but there's just a couple of unresolved change orders that they're working on right now.
Okay, next, negotiations with the JEA. Anybody want to chime in on that one?
We settled.
Yeah.
Tom,
I guess that's it.
yeah, Tom, you want to just go over a little bit? I missed the last meeting.
Dan, Mr. Baginski had discussed that at the beginning of the meeting, at least in executive session, that there were some compromises there, but that was the best solution that we had about the waivers. And even though there was the pay increase, it was being offset by other gives that the union had provided to us. So it was a win-win for both groups.
Okay. Thank you. All right, on to policies and regulations. Motion for approval of policies, second reading.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Mr. Sargent, I'm sorry, Mr. Sargent,
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo, Mr. Acevedo, turn your sound on, please.
Yes.
Mr. Brunetsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Colucci,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes. Motion for approval of policies first reading.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Mr. Sargent,
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo,
Yes.
Mr. Brunetsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Colucci,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes. Motion for approval of the minutes, the closed session meeting, July 22nd, 2020, and the official board meeting, July 22nd, 2020, Committee of the Whole and Business meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Mr. Sargent,
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo,
Yes.
Mr. Brunetsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Colucci,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes. Financial reports. Motion for approval of the bills list.
Motion.
Move. Second.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Mr. Sargent,
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo,
Yes.
Mr. Brunetsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Colucci,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes. Motion for approval of the treasurer's and the board secretary's report.
Move.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Mr. Sargent,
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo,
Yes.
Mr. Brunetsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Colucci,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes. Motion to open the public forum on any topic.
Motion.
Second.
Second. We're going to limit this to 45 minutes, so please be specific with your questions.
45 seconds.
45
45 minutes total. 45 minutes.
Total?
Yes.
How about 45 seconds?
Mrs. Irwin, are there any
Hi.
questions from the public?
Yes, we have a couple. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So the first is from someone who sent us an email. Hello, board. My name is Jade Bramwell. I live at, I don't know if I should read the address. I will afterwards if you ask me to. I attended the last meeting with Rays of Hope, and I have a question. Have there been any updates on your African American Studies course that will take place? Since we will not have this course during the 2021 school year, are you all open to having a discussion with history teachers on how we can include more of education of Black history in classes now? Not just including Nation Among Nations and Lead Club, but in the classroom.
Sure, I'll begin that response. And hi, Jade. Yes, we have made some progress, as I mentioned earlier in my superintendent's report. We've started our audit, and we are, of course, absolutely open to working with our history teachers. We'll begin to dive deeper into that work as we open school and begin moving forward and have our teachers here to have, or remotely, to have those that dialogue and work on continuing to strengthen our curriculum. We know that that's one of our goals and objectives this year. And as I mentioned, Ms. LaCitra has been working to start that audit so that when we do work with our staff, we have a place to work from and start from. Ms. LaCitra, did you want to expand on that at all?
Yes, I shall. Hi, Jake, and thank you for your question. So we have been working on infusing those kinds of topics just on equity and diversity throughout all content areas, not just specific to social studies, though social studies contains a great deal of those topics. We've been doing that work for the past year, So it's something that we continue to do and that we've been working on because our curriculum is malleable, and we are working not only with content area supervisors, but with teachers directly, and they did some work this past summer to continue that charge. And again, we'd be more than happy to welcome any other input that you have, but it's something, again, that we're committed to doing and that it's a work in progress, and it continues to strengthen and include more areas under those topics as aligned not only by the state, but within our own curriculum.
Thank you, Ms. Citra. And Jade, I remember you from last month, and so thank you for coming back and asking your questions.
Okay, we have another question that came in actually just regarding the board meeting, and it might help clarify it for some other people who are listening. Why is the board meeting being held virtually? You don't want to be in a room together, yet you think it's okay to send our kids back to school. I just don't understand the logic in that. So with the guidelines, we might need to clarify that.
Well, I think that's pretty simple because the governor has limited to 25 people per meeting, organization, room. Okay. So we're not going to be able to fit 25 people in a board meeting.
That's
What?
exactly correct,
I'm in
Mr.
the building.
That's correct, Mr. Walsh. And the executive order makes an exception for legislative proceedings, but a Board of Education meeting is not a legislative proceeding, and therefore we are still bound by the 25-person limitation that you just cited.
And just to add to that, we need to ensure that we have the availability for any public member who wants to attend the meeting. And with a cap of 25 in a facility, we can't, in one facility room, we cannot do that. This allows us to have any public that would like to attend our meetings.
Okay, we have another question. With parents encouraged to keep children home with any type of symptoms, such as cough, runny nose, etc., will the attendance policy be adjusted?
That's a great question, and actually we updated our Q&A document a little bit last week to reflect some of that, and when you receive the school level handbooks in the upcoming weeks, you'll see that absolutely we've adjusted that we have to be flexible with that. Obviously, we want people, students to stay home and staff to stay home when they are not well. So yes, we will be adjusting that.
Okay, we have a question, two different emails, but from the same person. So I'll read them separately. They're related, but they are separate. The first is, why are the children disinfecting their own desks, and what chemicals are they being exposed to in order to do so?
So at the middle school and high school level, we are asking the teacher to spray disinfectant. I'll let Mr. Ostroff speak to the actual disinfectant that's being used. And we are providing paper towels to each of the students to wipe their own desk and chair before exiting the room. And that is for several reasons. One, it is their desk. Therefore, nobody else needs to clean it other than them. And it also expedites the cleaning process in between the switching of classes. Mr. Ostroff, can you just comment a little bit on the disinfectant that we're using?
Certainly. The product is a number 64 hydrogen peroxide based cleaner. It is on the WHO and the health department's list of acceptable products to be used to combat COVID-19. And also in its diluted formula, it is a non-regulated product, so it's not hazardous to staff or students, and it has approximately a 10-minute dry time.
Okay, and I forgot to identify this. The person who emailed identified herself as Patty Brennan, one of our residents here in town. The second question is, I'm wondering why PE is part of the schedule, and when the kids are only in school 2 to 3 shortened days. Shouldn't the emphasis be on academics? Also, how do you expect kids to wear masks during PE while they're running around, and will they be sharing equipment, and will water breaks be available?
Gonna jump in on that one. So on the elementary level, PE is actually going to be done remote. So when kids are In school, their focus is just going to be on their core literacy, math, science, social studies, and they'll be receiving their PE as well as their art and music and other electives when they're actually home on the remote part, either in the afternoon or the days that they're not in school. On the middle and the high school level, we do have PE taking place. It is a requirement of the state that all students take that course. The way our schedules are set up, it is allowed to be done. To open the school year in September and October, we have the gift of being outside, obviously when it's nice weather, which hopefully will be more often than not. We also have room inside between large gyms, auxiliary gyms, and places kids can go inside. And also the way we've set up our schedules is gym classes are very small. I mean, you're talking gym classes that may only have 8, 10, 12 at the max kids in the class. So, they can definitely space themselves out in gym for the middle school. High school, half the students would have gym typically in the first half of the year. The other half would have it in the second half of the year. So a lot of kids will not have gym on the high school level if it's a second semester block for them. We really do need to offer it in the first semester. Again, it's a high school graduation requirement. And if we pushed every kid off to gym, at some point we have to think about the plan to undo this and get kids all back in school full time. And we would be putting ourselves in a position where we wouldn't be able to offer that in the spring if that was the case. So we have to kind of keep our plan for now, but also keep an eye on the future and how to make sure our plan will work no matter what direction we need to move in based on how these next few weeks and few months go.
Okay, we have another question. When and how will mask breaks be implemented?
So again, as mentioned in some of our Q&As and our framework, mask breaks will be built in. Face coverings are required, first of all, as you heard Mr. Baginski say. Face covering breaks would happen when students are completely socially distanced at the teacher's discretion, when we know that it is safe, that students won't be moving around, so that they can have an opportunity to take a break of that mask. Additionally, as Mr. Rotante just mentioned, if there is a PE class, obviously they would not be wearing that if they are doing some kind of physical activity, as based on the guidelines that have been provided for us.
Okay, the same person also has a question about if a child is homesick or due to exposure, will they be joining the full remote group or something different?
Great question. We did actually update our Q&A again with that on Friday. That is an opportunity. We want to ensure that students have every opportunity to be educated. We will not be asking them if they're a hybrid learner and they're not coming to school because they're sick. One of the scenarios in our chart that we put up on our website that talks about different scenarios like this is just that. Google Classroom, their group, and to complete their work so that they can count and stay up to speed on their work. And then in the afternoon, when they would be joining their teacher normally, they should get on remotely and join their teacher so that they can keep up with their work and be part of that cohort of students.
Okay, we have a person who sent us an email, Karen Ettery, parent of 3 students in our district, who has 2 concerns. One is, please consider providing quality masks and training for how to wear masks to students and staff. There are now studies and videos about how not all masks are effective and how incorrect mask wearing still allows for aerosol and droplet spread. In picking up 2 Chromebooks at 2 different buildings so far, I've observed one location a staff member wearing a mask below the nose and walking within a few feet of each other, a few feet of other masked staff members. At another building, I observed a staff member wearing a mask with the circular valves in the front, who was within 6 feet of parents and staff. This type of mask may let the exhaled air out forward and toward people. We must do our best to keep students and staff safe and as we plan to reopen. Please provide additional protective equipment to those staff members who will come closer than 6 feet to others, and please educate staff about how many items can be transferred without coming within close contact with each other. But the other one's not related, so I'll pause here.
Okay, no problem. So for the face coverings trainings, we have 4 days with staff next week in which we will be emphasizing the importance of the face coverings, how to wear them appropriately. We are not mandating what type of face coverings, as we are using the guidelines that have been provided to us from the Department of Ed in regards to what that face coverings just need to be worn. They do not specify a certain type. We will again be providing training for not only staff but students when they return. And certainly we encourage families to be having those conversations and practicing the face covering wearing at home. So students feel comfortable when they come to school and understanding the requirement to wear them. So yes, training will be provided. And in regards to additional PPE for staff that will be in close contact with students, in certain situations, we do have plexiglass shields in which, for example, a speech lesson perhaps, where you have to get closer to a student, there are plexiglass shields that are provided. So in order to see people's lips as they're speaking, that would be necessary. So we have provided additional PPE where needed. Staff has been working and making requests with to Mr. Baginski, and he's been working hard to ensure that everybody feels comfortable.
Okay, the other part of the question is, please provide our community with details about how the HVAC air circulation systems are currently functioning in all areas with staff and students. Please provide details of how symptomatic students will be separated, how air in areas that will house symptomatic students will be purified, or how these areas will have separate ventilation. In the ASHRAE reopening of schools and universities guidance about nurses' office general requirements, it states that these areas should be treated as isolation rooms with separate ventilation, and if that's not possible, a separate nurses' station trailer is recommended. Please provide these safety measures for students and staff.
Okay, so I think Mr. Baginski may have answered many of those questions in his presentation, but I am just going to ask Mr. Ostroff, who we've had several conversations about this, and he is our expert HVAC. Staff member here, so Mr. Ostroff, could you just provide a quick overview of all the regulations that are required and how we meet those regulations for HVAC?
Sure. And Allison, you may need to refresh the question just a little bit if I don't hit all of the points that were mentioned. All of our HVAC systems are serviced on a regular basis. We have dedicated, trained, and certified staff members that do that work. Our systems are on an energy management system so we can monitor how they are functioning. Filters are changed as per manufacturer's recommendations, and more often if needed, depending upon weather conditions. And you'd have to tell me what else was in that body of that question, Allison.
That part of it had to do with the beginning. I think the rest of it is surrounding where we have symptomatic students and how they'll be separated and how areas that house those students how the air in those areas will be handled. And if there's separate ventilation, or if that's not possible, a nurse's station trailer being recommended.
And any recommendation for a nurse's trailer, I believe, was a recommendation that may have been from ASHRAE. And the public needs to be aware that ASHRAE is a standard, not a governing or regulatory agency. With that said, all of the ventilation systems throughout the district, including our nurse's office, are again checked and monitored and serviced on a regular basis, and receive filter changes as per manufacturer's recommendations and the type of filter recommended.
Thank you, Mr. Ostroff. I know Mr. Baginski went over the isolation rooms in his presentation, but Mr. Baginski, can you just give another quick overview of how we are using the isolation spaces and when a sick student comes to the office who possibly could have COVID, in case this parent did not hear the presentation?
Sure. When we identify a student as a suspected COVID symptomatic student, the nurse would be transferring that student along with administration's assistants to an isolation room, which is not the nurse's office. And then the nurse's office can be disinfected and cleaned so that it can operate normally. The isolation room that schools have identified is a space that, if things go accordingly and parents are contacted immediately to come and pick their child up who is sick, a student should not be in the isolation room for very long. However, some circumstances do pop up where students cannot be picked up quickly, and they would be able to remain in the isolation room until their parent gets there. The isolation room is a place where if the student is very sick, the school nurse would stay with the student. Otherwise, a designated staff member would be there to supervise the student to ensure that they're not getting sicker or that they're okay. After the student gets picked up, that isolation room would then be cleaned and disinfected by custodial staff, and ensured that it was a clean space before it would be utilized again. So that is the intention of how it would work. When you take a large school, could there be a need for multiple isolation spaces? There could be, and our schools are prepared to identify additional locations or a larger space if possible.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a question. Will buses be provided for high school sports in the afternoon?
That's a great question. We do not have a response yet, but please know that is something we are actively investigating and hopeful that we can provide. We're just waiting on a few more details to see if that we are able to do that. So we're hopeful that we can, but we don't have that complete answer yet.
Okay. My name is Virginia Idanza. I'm going to be a remote learner at Jackson Liberty. I understand that when the time comes that clubs are allowed, remote learners will be able to participate. I do not believe that families that chose remote learning would go to school for the extracurricular activities. My question is, will there be clubs provided for students on remote learning that do not feel comfortable with going to school for a club? If not, could we possibly make it available to them by holding club meetings over Google Meet? Thank you for your time.
Well, as mentioned earlier, obviously, when we do begin to reopen and offer clubs, we want our students to participate. We know that that's a key part of attending school. For now, as mentioned in our framework that we put out as well, we want to get things cool. We will assess in September our clubs and our activities to see what we can offer with regards to in-person and virtual. Obviously, we'll try to do as much as possible to engage students because that's what we would like to see.
Okay, that strange music you just heard for a moment was me connecting one of our callers or getting ready to, so apologize for that. Just give me 1 second and we'll be connecting someone who would like to ask their question in person. One moment. Can't mess this up.
Hello, you're on.
I just need 1 more second, please.
Oh.
Hello?
Hello, you're on. Your name and your address?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Alina DeZoiza. I live at 4 Flatbrook Run, and I'm a rising senior at Jackson Memorial High School. I actually attended the last Board of Education meeting last month, and I had an amazing conversation with the superintendent about the racism that students of color, including myself, often face within the Jackson School District. I thank the Jackson School District for their feedback thus far, and with my concern today that I have is concerning mental health of the students affected by racism and racially charged microaggressions. So what is the school district doing moving forward as far as counseling for students who may be affected emotionally by these racially charged events?
Hello, it's nice to hear from you again. We always have available to us our guidance counselors for counseling. We also have our SACs available, as you know, being at the high school, that we have people who students can access and get mental health support. Additionally, we do have some services available through the YMCA counseling services. But most importantly, it's important that we reach out and ensure that students feel comfortable in letting us know that they are feeling that they need to talk to somebody or that they're struggling So we would ensure that, the communication that we put out is to all of our students, that they need to let us know and access these resources. And as you know, we also try to encourage students to encourage other students to do those things as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mrs. Irwin, anything else?
Yes, two last ones are kind of connected. One is the schedule in place for the month, marking period, or full semester? That's from one person, but it's also connected to another email that we received from Michelle Stonier, one of our residents here in town. I understand that we're starting the school year in a hybrid model.
I can't hear you.
However, I'm turning my phone down. Are there plans to move us to a full, to a 5 full day in-person model? I saw plans for what would cause the classroom or school building to shut down if there are positive COVID-19 cases. But how long are we planning to stay in this hybrid model? Are there situations that would allow the district to loosen restrictions incrementally to eventually be in person 5 days a week?
I think that was the first question that I heard was in regards to what is our plan or expectations for returning to in-person as much as possible. So I believe I may have answered this parent earlier today in an email, but if not, I'm going to repeat it anyway for the public to hear. As we mentioned in our framework, our original framework that we put out our presentation, one of the last slides was ultimately we will obviously want to see all our students back. That's our goal. We know they belong here with their peers and with their teachers learning. We would be assessing the data, the health data in our town and in our county, consulting with our health department, and then phasing students back in if everything was going well. Also, we would be listening to the guidelines from the Department of Ed and our governor in returning to a full-time schedule as much as possible. I can see that happening with our hybrid learners by first going to full day on their current Group 1, Group 2 schedule, followed by coming back 5 days a week. In regards to our remote learners, that's a little bit more challenging. As we again mentioned in Friday's communication, we would be looking to a time in our calendar that would make the most sense for transition to bring those students back, as it is going to be very complicated to undo schedules and reassign students to in-person teachers. So we're hopeful that we can get students back as soon as possible, but again, our data would be driving that decision. I'm sorry if there was another question that I missed when there was some.
Yeah, I can address the other part of that question. Our marking periods are not going to change. We will still have our 4 marking period placed and scheduled for the middle schools, or our 6 marking periods for the high school, and our trimesters for the elementary. All of our middle school and high school students who are on remote are really going to be getting semester 1 schedules. So they'll be getting semester schedules that will take them through the entire first semester. At this point, it's difficult to plan tomorrow with everything changing as quick as it is. So to start planning second semester schedules at this point would really be an exercise in futility, to be honest, and something that we don't even know if we could honor. So in order to get a nice clean schedule for everybody, all middle school and high school remote students, they'll get first semester schedules. Our elementary students are getting their teacher for the year, so they don't really do semester schedules. But just keep that in mind for all of our remote families. Your schedules will represent the first semester, which is from the opening of school through January.
That is all. That's all the comments we have.
Okay. Hearing no further questions, motion to close public forum.
Motion.
Second.
Resolutions for action. Motion to move finance.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Mr. Sargent,
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo,
Yes.
Mr. Vinetsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Colucci,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes. Motion to move facilities.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Mr. Sargent,
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo,
Yes.
Mr. Brunetsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Colucci,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes. Motion to move programs.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. I have a question, number 7. This is the Ocean County College continue participation in the professional development is $1,200. Is that per person, one set fee, or how does that work?
Go ahead, Mr. Vitante. No.
Yeah, that's a one-time fee for the entire year. They run PD workshops throughout the year. That each workshop they have, we are able to send up to three teachers. In many cases, really in every case, when we've requested to send additional, they've granted that to us. They offer a lot of tremendous PD on remote learning. This year, they really have a focus on connecting with students who are on remote activities and things that can be done remotely with students. So it's a very valuable resource for our staff, and we do use all of the workshops that they offer throughout the year.
Thank you. Any other discussion on programs? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Sargent,
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo,
Yes.
Mr. Brunetsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Colucci,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes. Motion to move students.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Mr. Sargent,
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo,
Yes.
Mr. Brunetsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Colucci,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
Yes. Okay, motion to move personnel.
Motion.
Move. Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I have a question on personnel number 1. It says for substitutes, letter H. Can you tell me, is that in accordance with the teacher contract, or is that substitutes that are not in the teacher's contract?
Is that the letter H, Mr. Sargent?
Yeah, personnel number 1, letter H.
That is somebody who is not on, I believe, on the teacher's contract. I would need to clarify that though, so let me look it up and get back to you on it.
So are we going to?
Briggsy, do you have more information on that one?
Yeah. So Ms. Tyler is been hired for a October she's on her teaching contract, per diem teacher contract for the month of September, because she will be taking over a permanent position on October 1st at the Get School. So in order for continuity for the students, we hired her on a per diem contract. That is her per diem rate based on what will be her annual salary.
So her daily rate is $278.
Correct.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Number 11, I like to see that we're still doing the Challenger League in the fall. Okay, and we're taking care of all of our kids. Okay, just a comment. Any other discussion under personnel? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Sargent,
Yes.
Mr. Acevedo,
Yes.
Mr. Brunetsky,
Abstain on anything transportation related. Yes to everything else.
Mrs. Rivera,
Yes.
Mr. Colucci,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh.
I abstain on number 25 and yes for everything else. Board comments. Ms. Rivera.
Thank you for everyone for attending this virtual meeting, the inquiries and the comments. I want to let everyone know that the district has been overall doing a wonderful job and have amazing, dedicated staff. Everyone have a great and safe night.
Mr. Acevedo, thank you, Ms. Rivera.
Yes, I would like to remind you what I mentioned before about the use of our TV station. When we developed that TV station for both schools, it was to be also used as a practical vehicle to communicate with the community. So if we can use it to feed information and gossip, advice, review, all the information we have, and we have a running group where people can count on the channel, just turn it on and see what's going on in the schools. Be great. The other one is, from the university experience that I've had, we also built in our new structures that we built years ago, lecture areas, a poetry area outside of Liberty, sort of we have a little amphitheater there, areas where individuals can gather in small groups. And I proposed this to our superintendent, that we consider what we discouraged for years, the use of lecture in small groups, so that the kids get back to being in a human environment with a real teacher from the distance, but being lectured to about a subject area that is necessary to be heard by large numbers of groups at different times. So I would suggest that we look at our area and for Memorial. It could be the wall could be moved. We have a lot of areas where we can provide lecture environments where the kids can be away from each other and still get a professional chunk of information that they can use for college or whatever. I don't know if I stated it right, but that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Acevedo. Mr. Bernetsky.
Just want to commend the staff and administration on a crazy, crazy time. They've done a great job. We've come to expect that, of course. I think the kids will be well served. It's going to be a little bit trying for sure, but just want to thank everybody for all the hard work they've put in. Appreciate it. Have a good night, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Bernetsky. Mr. Sargent.
I'd like to thank the staff for working so hard. Mr. Baginski definitely standing out in my mind as a stellar administrator. In addition, Mr. Primelli, once again, another wonderful agenda that we could read, understand, and vote on without hesitation. Thank you, everyone, and drive safely.
Thank you, Mr. Sargent. Mr. Colucci.
I'd like to thank Mr. Primelli and Mr. Baginski and staff for implementing a challenging school schedule to comply with the state mandates. And also for Mr. Ostroff, he's always has these continuing projects that he's able to keep up with and does a stellar job. So with that, I'd like to wish everybody a good night and stay safe.
Thank you, Mr. Colucci. I'd like to thank the administration, for a monumental task of setting this whole thing up. But I'd also like to remind everybody this is going to be a long race, and the horses aren't even in the starting gate yet. Okay? Be ready for adjustments and changes because they're going to come weekly, daily at times. Okay? Also, to the parents, communicate. Talk to the principals. Talk to the administrators. Don't listen to what you hear in the streets. If you have a question, ask. If you have to, ask one of us or go to the superintendent, but ask a question. Don't listen to Ed down the street, what he's telling you.
No, just check Facebook.
Thanks you all. And motion to adjourn by acclamation.
Motion.
Second.
Have a good night.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Right again.